Okay, we are recording this today for the people that were not able to attend. My name is Jamie Staten, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at TRECA, so thank you for joining us. Today, we're excited to have Annette Haller. She is from the Marion Crawford Prevention Programs, and she is going to be walking us through the next several slides, talking about mental health with children and youth. And Annette, I will go ahead and turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Annette Haller. I'm from Marion Crawford Prevention Programs. I'm also the Coalition Coordinator for Drug-Free Marion. And what we do is we're a group of people that schools, parents, people in our community that come together to address youth substance use through education, collaboration. And so today I'm going to talk to you about mental health in children and in youth. And so we'll get started by talking about 1 in 5 children live with a mental health condition. And so to put that into perspective, a typical classroom of 25 students, about 5 of them are going to be struggling with issues like anxiety and depression, ADHD, and other emotional disorders. So many times these challenges don't look like what we would expect them to look like. They may show up like trouble focusing, acting out, or withdrawing. So then 50% of the mental health conditions start by the age of 14 and 75% by the age of 24. So this means basically that most mental health challenges begin during adolescence, the same time that young people are developing their identity, managing new pressures, transitioning into adulthood. Early intervention is key, in my opinion. The sooner symptoms are recognized and addressed, the better the long-term outcomes will be. Schools, pediatricians, coaches, parents, we all have a vital role in playing in identifying when something isn't right and just helping to connect our young people to the right care that they deserve. The average delay between the onset of symptoms and intervention treatment is usually 8 to 10 years. So that means a child who starts showing signs of depression or anxiety by the age of 12, they might not get professional support until they're in their 20s. That's nearly, a whole decade struggling in silence without understanding what's happening or how to even get help. This delay can be caused by stigma, lack of access or care to treatment, or just simply not recognizing the signs. So reducing this gap is one of the most important and powerful things we can do to improve outcomes in our young people. Only about 50% of children and youth with mental health condition receive treatment. The other half go without. Often because of cost, limited providers, fear of being judged, or just lack of awareness. So when kids don't receive treatment, symptoms can worsen over time, impact school, it can impact relationships, school performance, and even their physical health as well. So we need to make mental health a healthcare routine and accessible as physical. So we want mental health care to be just as important as physical checkup, because no child should have to feel ashamed or have to wait to ask for help. So the consequences of failing to treat a mental health condition, approximately 50% of students age 14 and older with a mental health condition drop out of high school. This is the highest dropout rate of any disability group. This just shows how deeply mental health can affect learning, motivation, attention, attendance in school, and school performance. When a student is struggling emotionally, focusing in on academics sometimes is impossible for them. So this is why early identification and school-based support systems are really crucial at this time. And because behind every statistic is a young person who might have stayed in school if they had had access to the right help. So 70% of the youth in state and local juvenile justice systems live with a mental health condition. and at least 20 of these individuals are experiencing severe symptoms. So that just means at least 1 in 5 experience severe symptoms, such as major depression, trauma-related disorders, and psychosis. This tells us that many young people who need mental health are not getting it until they're already entered into the justice system. And then that makes it really hard to even address and support them. So it reinforces the need for us to be out there in doing community programs, prevention, making sure we know and have access to care so that these kids can receive the treatment before their struggles turns into a crisis and they end up into the legal system. So the prevalence of mental illness in the United States, adults in a given year, is anxiety disorder is 18.1%, major depressive disorder is 6.7%, bipolar is 2.6%, eating disorder is 2.1%, schizophrenia is 1.1%, and substance use disorder is 5.7%, which is up from 3.8% in 2010. So risk factors for substance use disorder, let's just say first there's family history. Genetics play a big role in this. If someone has a parent or close relative who has struggled with alcohol or drug abuse, they're at higher risk themselves. And this isn't a destiny, but it does create a genetic vulnerability. So then we have second, which is early use, is one of the strongest predators of addiction, in my opinion. Most people who develop a substance use disorder begin using before they're 18 and develop the disorder by the age of 20. So it's important to note that less than 2.1% of individuals who wait till they're 21 to start using develop a substance use disorder. So, we remind people how critical it is to stay abstinent from any type of substances until they're at least 21. Having existing mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, ADD, that they can awfully affect deep brain development and emotional regulation, and leading to higher vulnerability in life. It's also important to note that the risks increase when more than one of these factors are present. So in other words, if a young person with both a family history and early exposure to significantly high risk, or are significantly at higher risk than someone with just one. So recognizing these patterns helps us to identify who might need early support, education, and intervention. So signs and symptoms of depression: loss of motivation, neglect of responsibilities, excessive crying, withdrawal, sadness, lack of interest, the use of alcohol and other drugs. 5 of these usually have to be present every day for 2 weeks in order for it to be diagnosed as depression. So adolescents and males and depression, depression in males often look different anyway. When we talk about depression with boys, it's the common symptoms that are discussed. They're often a lot different than what you see in females. So men and boys experience an increase in negative thoughts. They're almost intrusive and repetitive, thinking that they can't turn off in their head. Their thoughts might center around self-blame, failure, frustration. So they're also more likely to describe their depression as stress. Instead of saying, I feel sad, they might say, I'm just under a lot of pressure. I'm just feeling so overwhelmed. The language could shift harder for others, and it's hard to recognize. In many cases, depression in men show up like anger, hostility rather than sadness, like it tends to show up in females as in sadness. It can look like they have a short temper, they engage in arguments more, or they with just plain withdraw from relationships. Instead of seeming down or tearful, men, they definitely appear more irritable. They start snapping at you. They will lose patience easily. They may become restless. So their signs look a little different than females. Recognizing the patterns is obviously very crucial. When we understand depression, it can look like irritability and anger instead of sadness. We can help more men and boys support. We can support them more easily before things can escalate with them. So I just wanted you to see that there is a difference, and the symptoms seem a little different in boys and men than they do in young ladies and women. So some of the symptoms and signs of anxiety, the physical ones would be pounding heart, chest pain, rapid heartbeat, blushing, fast breathing, shortness of breath, choking, dry mouth, stomach pains, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle aches and pains, especially through the neck, the shoulders, and the back, restlessness, tremors, shaking, irritability, and it just not being able to relax. Early warning signs, feeling very sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. Example, crying regularly, feeling fatigued, feeling unmotivated. For boys, it's just overall feeling irritable, anger that is not typical of them. Seriously trying to harm or kill oneself or making plans to do so. Severe out of control risk-taking behaviors can cause harm or to yourself or others. Sudden overwhelming fear for no reason, sometimes with a racing heart, physical discomfort or fast breathing, not eating, throwing up, or using laxatives to lose weight, significant weight loss or weight gain. So knowing the warning signs is so important. And so we talk, I was just at a school yesterday. I talked to sixth graders, all the sixth graders at a school. And we talked about the warning signs of depression, what to look for in themselves and in others. So severe mood swings that can cause problems in relationships, repeated use of alcohol and other drugs, drastic changes in behavior, personality, or sleeping habits, difficulty in concentrating or staying still, that puts a person in physical danger or causing school failure, intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities like hanging out with friends or going to class. Now, some of these are when I present to young people, like yesterday was sixth grade, I tend to show this a little differently by talking about not wanting to hang out with friends, not eating, maybe not getting a good 8 hours of sleep, those sorts of things. So we do talk to young people a little different and show them that these behaviors that I'm talking to you at, I kind of like put it down to their level of what it would look like in them. What do you do if you see warning signs? You reach out to your family doctor and share your signs. You ask for help to get connected to services and support. You can contact your local NAMI, but you can also contact 988. You can text or call 988. There's somebody there 24/7, 365 days a year to talk to you. And it can talk to you. You can call that number if you're worried about someone else, so they can give you some suggestions. But it's also 988 can be used if you feel that someone you see is struggling, you offer that to them as well and say, I'll be willing to sit here with you and we can call this number and there's someone there to talk to you. So that number is always there to help you as well. So when it says my child doesn't have a mental health condition, am I good? Well, we hope that, your child will never develop a condition, but we do have tips on how to build mental health of your child. And just so you know that, your child might not have a mental health condition right now, but I will be honest with you, I tell this story all the time to when I go to present, even to younger kids, that, I have 3 children, and my youngest daughter never had, that I saw, any type of mental health condition. And she went to play a college sport. And in 2020, during COVID, when it was, unfounded waters. And so she went off to college in 2020. And in 2021, the late fall of 21, she called us and said, I hate volleyball. I don't like my coach. I don't like my roommates. I don't want to be here. I hate school. And so my husband and I got in the car immediately and went down to her college and sat and talked with her as she hysterically cried, didn't know what was going on with her. She didn't understand what was going on. We were able to get her hooked up with a counselor at this school. She spent 18 months every Friday at 11 o'clock talking to a counselor. And she, to this day, she does not have a counselor today, but I will say that her mental health condition was situational. And so her counselor taught her to how to cope. She gave her coping skills, talked her through situations, taught her how to deal with situations. And she spent 18 months with this person. And so about 2 years after that, she hadn't spoken to her counselor in about 6 months, and she was asked to come back to her local school to speak to some young girls, high school girls, about her experience as a college athlete. And she did her spiel, and at the end she said, does anybody have any questions? And the one young lady sitting in the audience said, have you ever experienced any depression or anxiety while you were in college? And my daughter froze. She looked over, because I had gone with her, and she looked over at me, and I just kind of shook my head yes, like it's okay to tell. And she said, yes, I did. I suffered with a mental health condition. And she talked about that. So when we left there, I had no idea that she had never told a soul but her dad and I that she had been in counseling. And we walked out of there, and she said, that is the first time that I have ever admitted to anyone besides you and Dad that I've been talking to a counselor. I never told my boyfriend. I never told my roommates. I never told my teammates. And she said, do you know how freeing that was for me to be able to admit to people? And in that room was people who had coached her when she was there before. And so she said it was the most freeing thing she could ever do, was finally admit that, yes, she had had depression and anxiety, and she survived it. She, went through counseling and survived that. So that's one thing I always tell her, can I share your experience? And she's always said yes, because, she was, at that time, was a very dark place for her, because she really didn't understand what was going on with her. So, sometimes we're like, well, I'm glad that my child doesn't have it, but that doesn't mean your child will never develop it. And like I said, in her situation, it was situational. So one of the things, we're going to talk about some tips to build your child's mental health. And the first one is practice balancing parenting. And so when we talk about protecting children and teens' mental health, one of the most powerful things we can do is practice the balanced parenting. This means expressing love and warmth while still setting boundaries, and healthy boundaries. And it's not about being overly strict or overly passive. It's about finding the middle ground where your child can feel both supported and guided at the same time. Creating an environment that feels safe and emotionally open is one of the strongest protective factors that we can put in a child's life. When teens know that they can share their feelings without being judged or dismissed, then they're far more likely to come forward and talk to you about these things. When a child feels truly loved by the person who knows them best, they and including both strengths and their struggles, they develop trust. And so that trust is what helps them reach out for help instead of trying to handle things on their own. So balanced parenting isn't just about discipline or structure. It's about building the kind of connection that encourages honesty, resilience, and emotional well-being. The second thing is to understand teen emotional development. It's hard to know if your teen is struggling with their mental health if you don't know what the typical range of emotion is. So during the puberty, and teens experience stronger, more intense emotions. So that's the part of the brain that's responsible for processing your emotions, and it's developing rapidly during adolescence. So at the same time, the part of the brain that helps regulate these emotions, the prefrontal cortex, is still trying to catch up. So often teens feel emotions more deeply, but haven't mastered how to manage to express them. So as parents, it's important for us to remember that we don't have all the answers. So sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is just be a good sounding board. Someone who listens without judgment and helps them calm down when they're feeling overwhelmed. Their feelings are just feeling so much that they can't handle it. It's nice that we're just there to be a sounding board to them. When we create an environment where teens feel safe and understood, they're much more likely to open up and share with us what they're going through. And that's more of a sense of safety that can make all the difference in the world for them to reach out for help and not shut down. So the third tip is learning the signs of anxiety and depression. And again, like I said before, this looks much different in males and females. So one of the things that we can do is, parents and caregivers, is to learn the signs of anxiety and depression and remember that they look different in males and females, for one. For example, for girls and young women, they often express depression through sadness, excessive crying, withdrawal. They have low self-esteem. They might seem more anxious, more sensitive, and more overwhelmed, where on the other hand, boys and young men often show their struggles in less obvious ways. Instead of sadness, you might see the anger, irritability, restlessness, and sometimes risk-taking behavior. So they may say they're stressed or tired rather than admitting they feel sad or hopeless. It's also important to notice changes in their daily functioning as well, like slipping grades, losing interest in activities, avoiding friends, changes in their sleep and their eating. These are all often early warning signs of something deeper than what you think might be going on. So when we educate ourselves about these signs, we're better equipped to recognize when teens need help. And when we step in early before things become a crisis is key. The fourth thing is commit to building your child's resilience. One of the most important tools we can give our kids is resilience, the ability to bounce back when life gets tough. The best way for children to continue to building their strengths while being prepared for all the curveballs that life throws at you. Teach them how to manage stress in healthy ways. So they might that might mean helping them recognize what stress looks like in their own body. Maybe tight shoulders, irritability, fatigue, showing them healthy coping strategies such as like deep breathing, journaling, going for a walk, listening to music, or just talking about what's bothering them. So it's important to model these same habits in ourselves. And sometimes that's hard as parents, but Kids learn far more from what we do than what we say. So when they see adults handling stress calmly and using positive coping skills, they begin to understand the stress is normal part of life. Building resilience doesn't mean shielding your children from every, hardship. It just means teaching them to navigate challenges confidently, and knowing that they have the tools, the mindset, and the support to recover and grow stronger from whatever that hardship might be. Number 5 is acknowledging the external forces they're facing. So it's important to remember that children and teens today are navigating a lot of external pressures, more than we realize, probably more than what we ever did as young people. They're dealing with things like bullying, social media influence, that's something that some of us probably didn't have, academic stress, family challenges, exposure to even injustice and world events, which can take a toll on their mental health as well. So as adults, we might look at some of these issues and think, oh, well, that's not a big deal, or they'll get over it. But for young people, these experiences might be the first time they're facing stress or rejection or public pressure. So to them, they feel overwhelmed and even defining. So our role is to validate their feelings, honestly. Even if it doesn't seem significant to us, instead of minimizing their struggles and what they're trying to say, you would say things like, that sounds like that's really tough, or I can see why this would bother you. So giving them that support, validating their feelings is so important. Acknowledging what they're going through doesn't make their problems bigger. It makes them feel seen, heard, and supported. And that's what's so important in building their mental health. This kind of understanding can make a world of difference in helping them cope and build their confidence. So just validating their feelings is one of the number one things that I feel is so important when you're talking to your young people. Suicide is a real concern. One of the things that, it's the second leading cause in ages 15 to 24. And before I am finished here, I will share with you the statistics that we have in Marion County. We did a survey last fall, and the results were a little alarming for us. So, but since suicide is currently the second leading cause of death among youth, it just shows us how serious mental health challenges are for our young people today. And behind every statistic is a teen who just simply feels hopeless, alone, and trapped in the pain that they couldn't find a way out of. So research shows that 90% of youth who die by suicide have a mental health condition. And so often depression, anxiety, and trauma-related disorders. Many of these young people never receive the adequate treatment or support, and maybe because their family didn't know. Maybe they just didn't catch the warning signs. National surveys also are consistently showing that significant percentage of high school students have seriously considered suicide. And this means the issue touches nearly every school, every community, and every family in some way. And again, I will share those surveys with you in a few minutes. The most powerful thing that we can do to reduce the stigma around mental health and encourage open judgment and free conversation. That's one of the most powerful things we can do is talk to our kids about it. And when young people know that it's safe to talk about your feelings and that help is available, it can truly save thousands of lives. So our most important thing here today is to talk to you about reducing the stigma and treating mental health the same way we treat physical health, because it's just as important. Some suicide concerns, some of those things would be having no motivation or losing interest in activities that they once enjoyed, withdrawing or feeling isolated, a sudden change in personality or behaviors, giving away prized possessions or behaving recklessly, talking about death or not being here tomorrow, talking about ways to kill oneself, or searching for these topics online. The key is to never ignore the warning signs. So when it comes to suicide prevention, one of the most important messages I can emphasize is never, never, never ignore the warning signs. And so often there are small signals, changes in, like I said, behavior, mood, or communication, that indicates a young person is in distress, and that's their way of showing that. And also, it can also include withdrawing from friends, experiencing hopelessness, and or making comments about not wanting to live, or saying that they would be better off if they were no longer here. So even if things seem subtle or uncertain, it's always better to take it seriously and check in. One of the things I want to emphasize today as well is asking someone directly if they're thinking about suicide does not increase the risk. In fact, it can be a lifeline to them. It tells them that they're not invisible, that someone cares enough to ask. Now, I will say that when you want to ask someone, try to make it not demeaning, not say, you're not thinking of committing suicide, are you? Because that can then give them a defense of, well, no, but they're lying. If you just say it calmly, actually, if put your hand on them and say, are you thinking of taking your own life, or are you thinking of hurting yourself? And so, because I'll tell you a story here about the gentleman that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. He was very distraught that day. He walked onto the observation area, and he was just pacing back and forth. He was wanting to jump, but he wasn't wanting to jump. He just was beside himself. And he said that, he was pacing back and forth and no one noticed. He said, actually, he was so annoyed because people around him didn't notice he was in distress. They just kept asking him, will you take our picture? Will you take my camera and take our picture? And that continued to just escalate his feelings that no one cared. He wasn't even seen. No one was even paying attention to him. And he said, all I wanted was someone to come up to him and say, are you okay? What is it? Is something going on? And no one said anything, and that's why he jumped. And so most of the time, people just want to be heard and seen. And so asking them if they're considering suicide doesn't put the idea in their head. They're already thinking that at this point. But knowing that someone cares, and I talk to kids in school about this all the time, that just being a good friend, just showing that you care, just saying, listen, I've noticed A, B, and C. I noticed that you haven't been going out with friends. I noticed you haven't been eating very well lately. You look very tired. Tell them what you're seeing in them. and then say, there's help available. And if you don't know how to get help, again, be sitting with them, call 988. Sit with them while they call 988. And you don't have to stay with them the whole time, because maybe the person doesn't want you to hear everything. But at least make sure that you're connecting them to help. If you don't want to do that, then ask them, and this is going in maybe this isn't your child, maybe it is your child's friend that you're talking to. Ask them, who can we talk to? Who would you feel comfortable talking to? And then contact that person. So I can't stress enough that if you're seeing warning signs, never ignore them and never leave that person alone until you have connected them with someone that can help them. So even if it seems uncertain, like you're not sure, it's always the better to take it seriously, check in. You ask them directly. If your teen is showing signs, or your youth is showing signs of depression, it's not a phase, it's a crisis moment. So your role isn't to have all the answers. It's to make sure they're not alone, and you're going to connect them right away. And I also say this as well. You don't have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. And you don't even have to talk. If you're just there and saying, listen, I'm here, I care about you. Life would stink if you're not here. Or just sitting there and saying, I'm not leaving you until we find someone that you're willing to talk to. Never leave them alone until they've gotten someone that they trust to help them, or you actually take them somewhere. So I just want you to, if there's one thing that you come away with here, is never ignore the warning signs, even if you think it's, I don't know. It's better to say, listen, listening and responding early can save a life. So it's always better to overreact than to wish that you had done more. So I'm to the point where I'm going to share with you some local statistics. So last October, Marion Crawford Prevention Programs and Drug Free Marion did a survey. We paid for a survey, and it was we surveyed 3,173 students in Marion County. That means the schools that we were able to survey, and I will tell you that not 100% of kids were surveyed, because some parents opted their kids out of the survey. But let me tell you that we did all 4 county schools in Marion County. We did Marion City, we did Tri-Rivers, and we did Buckeye Community School. And we surveyed them, and I will just share, the survey was about substance use, and it also addressed mental health. And the mental health portion of it, the results were 19% of those kids seriously considered suicide. Middle school and high school. Middle school was 22%, high school was 17%. 38% said that they were feeling down. They had feelings of feeling down. 37.7% said they felt depressed. Those numbers to us were alarming. And so that's why we are in any school that will have us, and we talk to kids from 6th grade to 12th grade about depression, anxiety, and signs of suicide. So that is the end of my presentation, but I would be willing to take questions if anybody has any.